Hi, this is Sweet Life and I'm Natasha with the recipe for making jalapeno poppers. We're coming towards the end of summer and are now getting into football preseason. It so happens that my guy Anthony Joshua is boxing this weekend. Good luck to him. And I like to make pub or bar food for when I'm watching boxing matches, football games, or just on a weekend. Jalapeno poppers are something really easy that you can make as a nice appetizer or snack for yourself, or if you're having people coming over to watch a sporting event. It's not the healthiest thing, but it's also not the worst thing you could be eating. And it's something really quick that you can put together, but it looks rather impressive. In the case of poppers, the first time I had it from the store. I bought it from like the refrigerated section. It came breaded. And the reason why I choose to make my own, because you could just as easily buy it from the store, as with most of these types of things, is that they're already not the healthiest thing. But when you buy them pre-made from the store, it tends to be even worse. I'm not the biggest fan of breaded things, and typically when you buy poppers from the store, they come breaded. In addition to that, they have like really high amounts of sodium. Now, years ago, when I first tried making this, it was when my uncle and his girlfriend were visiting from New York. I made this and they came out like way too hot. So here I have some jalapenos, which I've just sliced the long way and then just taken out the seeds. Now I would recommend using gloves for this. The reason being that jalapenos can vary in heat levels where you might get a bunch and, one is really hot, quite a few that are mild, but even the ones that aren't that hot, a lot of the heat, as with other peppers, are contained within the ribs and the seeds. So to control the heat level, because we want it to have a little bit of spice, but to not be overwhelmingly hot, I go ahead and just scoop out the seeds and the ribs. It also gives you more room for the filling. And so, as I said, I would recommend wearing gloves. This way, obviously, don't rub your eyes, don't rub your mouth, don't put your hands in your mouth. But just so when you take off the gloves, you wash your hands, you're pretty much good to go. You don't have to worry about residual heat. As if you have like the least little nick or scratch or whatever on your hands, or even just sometimes just handling the peppers, you don't even have to have cuts or wounds on your hands, but just like touching the peppers and getting the juices in your fingers, it can cause your hands to feel like your flesh is burning. And so with that, I recommend just going ahead using gloves to prep the jalapenos. Save yourself the trouble. When you go to the store, depending on how they have them laid out, like when I bought these from the store, they were in like a basket and you would just pick out one by one whatever you wanted. So in that case, just take care to pick them up by the stem, as it reduces the risk of getting any of the juices on your hands. I would caution you against getting the ones in the package with like the plastic wrap. The reason being that you want to be able to give them a look over, make sure they're not bruised, they're not in bad condition. You want them to have like a nice bright green color. They should look fresh, right? They don't have to be pretty or perfect looking. They can have bends and curves and bumps in them. But you want to make sure that obviously they're not moldy. They don't have like soft spots. They're not bruised up. They should look nice and vibrant. They should look fresh. And because not everyone likes heat or spicy food, I do jalapeno poppers, but I mix them in with these little baby peppers. The jalapenos really just come in one color, which is like this kind of forest green type color or deep dark green. It's interesting to mix in these other peppers because they come in yellow, orange, red. They're not spicy, or typically they're not. I would say with jalapenos, in a bunch of 10, you might get like 3 or 4 that are hot and the rest of them are going to be pretty mild. With these peppers, the amount that are spicy, in contrast to those that are not, the ratio of not spicy is even lower. So in that case, in a group of 10, maybe one of them might be a little bit spicy. So mixing in these little peppers, it gives you some really nice vibrant colors, but then it's like you also have an option for people that don't like spicy food. And with these as well, I take care to go ahead, cut them in half as I do with the jalapenos and remove the ribs and seeds. It's not a lot of spice to them or anything like that, but it helps to keep things neat. And really, you don't really want to eat the seeds and the peppers. They won't do anything to you, but you also don't really want to munch away on these little seeds, right? It just helps to clean it up, make it look a little bit more presentable, makes it easier to eat. Removing the seeds and the ribs from inside the peppers as well, it gives you more space for your filling. And so from here, we're just going to go ahead and stuff the peppers with cheese. But I use a blend of cheeses. It helps with the texture. It also helps with the flavor. So the foundation is I start out with some cream cheese. And this is just a package of cream cheese, which I soften, put into a bowl, mash to soften it even more with a spoon. To this, I add a 3-cheese blend. It's like the packaged cheese that you would see in the store for tacos. But you can also do cheddar, pepper jack, Colby jack, whatever. Just make sure it's shredded. And I would recommend having it be like the more finely shredded kind, not the thicker one, just because we want to be able to easily blend it with the other cheeses and to help ensure that it melts evenly. As someone where sometimes cow-based dairy doesn't get along with my stomach, I sometimes sub in goat cheese. So you can play around with the cheeses that you use. If you want, you could get a little bit fancy, maybe use goat cheese or like ricotta or something along those lines. As I said, you can play around with the type of shredded cheese that you use as well. But generally speaking, I would recommend that you go with one kind of cheese or dairy product that's smooth and creamy, and then one that's solid but shredded. So for smooth and creamy options, obviously like I'm showing here, you can use cream cheese, which is pretty inexpensive. You can zhuzh it up with maybe some goat cheese as an alternative, or even you can go with sour cream, Greek yogurt, or you can add that as like a third cheese, right? But you want something that doesn't have too much liquid in it. If you use ricotta, I would suggest going ahead and squeezing out the liquid. And to that, you then want to add your shredded cheese. So, like I said, you can use a taco blend, you could use cheddar, you could certainly do mozzarella, something shredded that isn't going to start out being so soft, but that will melt well. That will add some good flavor. And with the combination of these two textures, when you mix them together, you stuff it into the jalapenos, you end up with a smooth filling that has like that nice stretchy cheesy texture. And combining these 2 or 3 types of cheeses, it's like the perfect combination. Now, we want to taste the jalapeno, we want to taste the peppers, and we want to taste the cheese blend. So we're not going to season this too heavily. Really just a little bit of salt just to enhance the flavors that we already have going on. But I'm not going to put like any herbs or seasonings into it because I want those ingredients to shine through. But again, your mileage might vary. If you want, you can certainly add hot sauce, garlic powder, onion powder. I don't think it's really necessary here. And I would recommend, if you decide that you want to punch up the flavor a little bit, to maybe put together a sauce on the side. So that way you can serve this, you can control the heat level with the poppers, but then leave it up to yourself and your guests to add additional spice or fixins rather than cooking it into the poppers. And so now we're going to stuff the poppers. You can certainly use a spoon if you'd like. If you wanted to get fancy, let's say if you went the goat cheese route, you could certainly use a pastry bag and a nice little tip to fill it in very nicely. But in this case, this is just for game day, right? This is just for watching the fight. So having the gloves on, I just go ahead and make use of it. And I find this to actually be really efficient because with the cream cheese, not that it's runny, but I can easily get a little bit into my hands, and with the gloves on, obviously, just pop it into the popper, use my finger to just kind of smooth it in, to push it down into the cavity. So this way, what you want to do is to use your finger to push the cheese mixture into the popper, so that way you don't have any air pockets. If you wanted, you could certainly at this point go ahead, put together like a breading and dip the jalapenos into that. You could also wrap them in slices of bacon. When you're mixing up the cheese filling, you could put in some crispy bacon, like crumble it in, mix that into your cheese. And, you know, if you wanted from there, you could maybe put in some dried fruit, various options to change up the flavor. But in this case, I'm just keeping it simple. This is just like the basic foundation recipe. But from here, you can adjust according to your own preferences. You can certainly dress it up. You can keep it dressed down. But what I like about this recipe is that it's very flexible, that you can take it, you can play around with the types of peppers that you use, you can play around with the types of cheeses that you use, you can add other ingredients. If you want a little bit more complexity, you know, you can maybe even do like some onions, like some grilled onions or something, maybe a little bit of fig jam, drizzle that over, which would probably be a really cool idea if you went with the goat cheese. So it's a recipe that's very simple, very adaptable, very customizable. Sky's the limit. It's really determined by you and your preferences and whatever ideas you can dream up. And from there, once you have all of your poppers stuffed, we're going to put them right into the oven. I put it onto a grease sheet pan. And And granted, ovens operate at different temperatures. They cook differently. I would say in the range of 375 to 425 is perfect. But depending on the kind of oven that you have, you don't want to have it be directly underneath the broiler. The reason being that the peppers are raw and pretty crunchy at this point in time, but we want them to cook and get them relatively soft. We don't want them to turn to mush, but we want the peppers to cook. We want to have the cheese melt. But if you have it right up underneath the broiler, you run the risk of the cheese browning and burning before the peppers get a chance to cook. So you want to balance your oven temperature, and you also want to be aware of where you place these in the oven. Like I said, this is a perfect option. I know a lot of people make jalapeno poppers, whether it's for like football season, for the Super Bowl. You certainly can. I make this when I'm watching boxing. It's a cool thing to make for game day. It's a cool thing to make on the weekends. If you have kids, I would just say be careful with the peppers, but get them involved. And actually, I recorded this while teaching my mom how to make these poppers. She was actually the one that you see putting the stuff together. So it's like her hands in the video. And at the end of it, when we finished making it, she was really impressed by, number one, how good it tasted, and then how simple and easy it was to make. This is something that you could certainly make, like for a party, because you can make a good amount of it pretty quickly. It's not very time intensive. It's not anything difficult. And so with that, I hope you enjoy.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my Cooking at Home playlist. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.